Hi, my name's Phil. I'd like to talk about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss how Boris Johnson has decided that suddenly the EU Brexit talks are back on after the EU refused to back down to his demands and repeated what they've been saying for weeks. But that is how politics works in the UK now. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So normally this slot would be a video on PMQs. It's not forgotten, but a bit of a topsy-turviness today. And so we're going to start off with Brexit. Now, just to remind everyone of where we were. So Boris Johnson instructed his negotiating team, led by David Frost, to offer no comprehensive proposals for an EU deal for about 7 months, which was supposed to run along the lines laid out in the withdrawal agreement. Then he started tentative moves towards actually discussing issues like fishing, state aid and so on last month. Very nice, actually allowed some progress to be made. Very good, excellent. Progress that should have been made half a year earlier or put on hold for 2 years while everyone deals with COVID. One of the two, not neither, not just left for half a year with nothing in place, but it was what it was. Now that Johnson had finally come up with some proposals, he seemed to expect the deal to be agreed immediately. Well, said the EU, I mean, it's nice you have proposals at last, but now come the negotiations, because here are our proposals. You don't like those. They're your proposals. We're not all that happy about those. So what happens now is we move a little bit towards each other. And, you know, this wasn't in Johnson's plan. You know, it wasn't in the manual, he complained. So he issued an ultimatum. I know what to do in this situation. I'm going to issue another ultimatum. I know they've ignored all my last ones and I've looked entirely silly out of it, but another one will do the trick. If the EU did not agree to enter into tunnel talks on October the 15th, the day of the EU summit, he would walk away from the negotiations and embrace a no-deal outcome. So tunnel talks, for those who haven't heard me or others talk about them before, is the final stage in trade negotiations. Intense talks which take place in a media blackout to avoid any silly distractions in the press and any last-minute political posturing. So the EU Council met for their summit last week and decided that there was enough progress to be worth talking about. Because in the previous summit, they didn't even talk about Brexit. There's no progress had been made. We've got more important things to do. Last week's summit, there were also very important things to discuss. But, you know, there was a bit of, progress made. So they thought, well, we'll spend a little bit of time talking about Brexit. That's fine. That's okay. We can do that. And then they said, but, you know, there's not enough progress to trigger the tunnel talks. And Boris Johnson cried foul, saying that the EU Commission President had promised these talks. Of course, she had not. She had promised to intensify talks after the summit. Although I'm not sure how that's entirely possible, as the talks have been going on every single week for a while now anyway. Not quite sure how you intensify them further without electrodes, a car battery and nipple clamps. But where Johnson started moaning, there was a draft communique. It's part of the EU summit, and it included reference to intensified talks. Everyone was perfectly happy with this. Boris Johnson was happy with it. The EU were happy with it. But then the EU got wind of the fact that Boris Johnson thought this meant tunnel talks. He was interpreting it as these final stage talks when suddenly a deal emerges along the lines he thinks he's going to get. So then they said, no, that's not what we mean. So what they did is they just dropped the term altogether. And then he started crying. Now, here's the thing. The actual term in the EU statement was neither here nor there. Absolutely irrelevant. Boris Johnson promised to abandon talks if the tunnel stage did not begin immediately after the summit. If it was not agreed at the summit, he was off. That's it. No deal Brexit it is then. They didn't. It doesn't matter what was said in the communique. They were not authorising the beginning of these tunnel talks. But also Boris Johnson didn't want to stop the talks either. Because like I said, there's arguments both sides, but I still think he ultimately wants a deal. And not for the first time, he was faced with having to follow through on an ultimatum. So here's the problem now. Now, when he issued his other ultimatum early in the year, so what happened was in summer, he said if insufficient progress was made by this date in the end of June, that he would walk away from the talks. At the end of June, both sides were saying there'd been insufficient progress, including Boris Johnson. Did he walk away? No, he didn't. But then the press didn't really make much of that. This time it was very much in the spotlight, so he had to do something. If the talks just carried on as normal, those especially intensified talks, whatever that means, then he looks a bit silly, and he's going to look a bit silly on the front pages. So he had to sort of make it look like he was following through and cancelling the talks without actually cancelling the talks. So what he did is he pretended to cancel the talks by telling Michel Barnier not to fly over to London this Monday, the Monday just gone, which is what he was originally supposed to do. But talks still took place between the two sides. Barnier and Frost were talking every single day on the phone since the summit. So all smoke and mirrors, as we'd come to expect. But negotiations themselves technically were not going on. But then negotiations didn't go on for the first 6 months of the so-called negotiating period anyway, because it was constantly the EU saying, these are our proposals, and the UK going, we don't like those. And the EU going, well, okay, what are yours? We don't like yours. Yeah, okay, I get that. What are your proposals? We're not ready to give you our proposals yet. Do you have any? Maybe. And that was 6 months. Now, Barnier is flying to London again for those intense talks. So this act of petulance lasted approximately 5 days, including the weekend. So what is the reason being given by Boris Johnson for the change of heart? Naturally, they say that the EU has fundamentally changed its approach, as they required. We demanded they fundamentally change their approach, and they have done so. Okay, good. What exactly does that mean? So if you read the government statement, it notes a few things in terms of statements that the EU has made. Michel Barnier specifically, but as the UK government press statement notes, Michel Barnier is authoritative on this issue. First of all, the EU have said that there should be intensive talks on all issues. Yes, they have. The EU have been saying this for months. It is the UK that refused to talk about all key issues throughout the year, not the EU. They published their detailed proposals for over half a year ago. And although the communique, like I said before, drops the term intense, that was on the part of the EU Council, remember? It's nothing to do with the EU Commission. Well, it's part of the EU, but they're different people. The EU Commission and the negotiating team immediately after the summit made clear that they were still happy to intensify talks. They made it clear that nobody was taking away the intensified talks. They were still there. The word had just been dropped from the final statement because Boris Johnson was misinterpreting it. It was never taken off the table by the EU, either publicly or privately. It was actually taken away by the UK because we've had 5 days when we haven't had any talks or had any negotiations, any meaningful talks. Secondly, they also said that the EU have noted that they are dealing with an independent sovereign country. It's an old sovereign term bandied about again. But again, the EU have been happy to go along with that from the start. See, here's the thing. They're not new to trade negotiations. They're quite well practiced. They understand that a trade deal is only concluded when both sides can sell it back home as a win. It doesn't matter that it may not be a big win for one of the sides. In fact, very often it is not. As long as they can both claim it's a win, it'll be concluded. If it can't, if back home, one side it's not very popular, then it won't be concluded. So to this end, EU negotiators are very experienced at using the sort of language that their negotiating partners would like to be employed for domestic consumption back home in order to get the deal finalised. No skin off the EU's nose at all. They don't have to waste time debating the notion of what is independence and what is sovereignty. They've been happy all year long to say, yep, it's even in the withdrawal agreement, very happy to accept the UK as an independent sovereign nation. They don't even mind every now and then using the term independent and sovereign equal. But we're not. We're much smaller and less wealthy than the EU collectively. Of course we're not equal, but they don't pick, split hairs over that. They don't pick any bones on that. They're quite happy to use whatever language Boris Johnson requires of them. No skin off their nose, no change of position. I challenge anyone to find evidence anywhere of Michel Barnier ever saying that the UK was not independent or sovereign at any time during these negotiations. And then the third statement, the EU have noted that movement will be required of both sides. Again, Barnier has never said otherwise. Sure, some EU heads of government have talked about standing firm and not moving any further, just like Boris Johnson himself. Politicians. But Barnier, the chief negotiator, has consistently talked of being flexible in order to find common ground. Again, that is how all negotiations are ultimately successful. Nobody, doesn't matter how mismatched the two sides may be, nobody expects one side to move in any treaty other than possibly a treaty of surrender. You expect movement from both sides. Now, have the EU engaged in tunnel talks? Because this is the crux of the whole thing. Boris Johnson said he's walking away from negotiations if they do not trigger those tunnel talks. Have they agreed to trigger the tunnel talks? No, because there's no basis for doing so. So has the EU met the demands that Johnson insisted on in order to carry on negotiating beyond last week? No, they have not. So this last week has basically just been a lot of noise, days wasted as the clock ticks by, to save face yet again for a charlatan who simply has no idea how to conduct negotiations for anything. So there it is. Those are my thoughts on the subject. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.